Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Rory sent me notes. Steve, check out the story from roadandtrack.com. Roadandtrack.com, of course, is an organization. They're wonderful. They actually used to publish stuff that I wrote. Joe Kucinski wrote this story, though. C8 Corvette driver arrested for 107 mile per hour sprint, according to police. And they say that when asked why he's driving so fast, he said he was late for a haircut. That's 107 miles per hour. In Florida, that's an issue. So a Florida man was arrested. I'm pointing it out because most tickets, traffic infractions don't get you arrested. The man was arrested after police, they clocked him driving a C8 Chevrolet Corvette convertible at 107 miles per hour. Now, that may be well below the vet's top speed, but that speed means the driver is subject to the state's newly instituted super speeder law that applies to driving at over 100 miles per hour, which means potential jail time and hefty fines. And keep in mind, when this law went into effect recently, I did a story about somebody who was the first person they believe who was so ticketed. The law went into effect at midnight or immediately after midnight one night, and within a minute or two, somebody was ticketed for breaking this law. It is an arrestable offense, so it's not just a speeding ticket. And apparently, this happened because of a haircut appointment. Police identified the alleged speeder as a 57-year-old from Florida. Video posted on the Flagler County Sheriff's Office Facebook page shows the pursuit and the arrest. The video clip begins with a black Corvette blasting by the parked patrol car. Police officer immediately begins to pursue. Once the officer catches up behind the Corvette with his lights and sirens activated, the driver of the Corvette pulls onto the shoulder. Driver is asked to exit the car. He's patted down and then handcuffed. Officer then asks the inevitable question, why was the man driving so fast? And the quote is, I have an appointment with my barber. The officer repeats the answer in apparent disbelief. An appointment with your barber? And then the driver says, well, that car is kind of cool to drive. Cool to drive. Now, the officer was seemingly unimpressed and informed the driver that driving over 100 miles per hour in Florida is a criminal offense, not a traffic violation, but a criminal offense, and he will now be headed to jail, and that cool Corvette will now be towed. And so I've mentioned before, there are several levels of things we can assign crimes as, and of course there's felonies, there's misdemeanors, and there's civil infractions. Many traffic tickets, like 5 over, or improper passing, or disobeying a stop sign, are civil infractions, meaning you don't face jail time. You pay a fine if you're guilty and get some points on your license, but you don't face jail time. But the super speeder law does actually have jail time attached thereto. Therefore, it is not a civil infraction, which explains the handcuffs and the mention of the word jail. So Florida House Bill 351 was referred to as the super speeder law, and enforcement began on July 1 of this year. So relatively recently, just July 1st. Under the new law, if you are driving at either more than 100 miles per hour or 50 over, so you're going through a 35 at 90 super speeder, you can face criminal charges. The first offense carries penalties of up to 30 days in jail, a $500 fine, or both. So here, the driver was taken to the detention facility where he was later released on a $150 bond. Suffice it to say, this may end up being one of the most expensive haircuts in history. And to add a little more salt in the wound for the speeding Corvette driver, the arresting officer is behind the wheel of a Ford Mustang. So, now, keep in mind, we're not racing the cops out there, but of course, there would be something akin to a little friendly competition there when the man in the Corvette gets pulled over by a Ford Mustang. But yeah, 107. So you might say, Steve, what do you think is going to actually happen to somebody like this on a first offense? If somebody was brought into court with an attorney on a first offense super speeder, and let's assume they had a clean driving record, nothing on their record till date. there's a very good chance the court's going to say, well, you're guilty of the super speeder law. You're going to get a stack of points for that, I assume. You're going to have to pay a monstrous fine, a bunch of court costs, a towing and impound fee for your Corvette. And remember, the guy was handcuffed and brought into jail. The second he sets foot in that jail cell, he's been jailed. And so he already has served, by definition, 1 day in jail. So there's a good chance, I would think, it depends on the judge, but there's a good chance the judge is going to go, okay, I'm going to fine you, court costs, impound fees, all that stuff, a ton of money. Whatever points are associated with super speeder, that's going to go on your record. That's ugly. But as far as jail goes, there's a good chance the court's going to go, I'm going to credit you a time served. So you have served some time in jail, and trust me, being handcuffed, stuffed in the back of a cruiser, taken to the jail, doing the whole rigmarole of processing, and then even if you only set foot in the jail cell for 1 minute and then right back out again, you went through that whole ugly process at the front end. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they say, we're going to call this time served. I wouldn't be surprised. Now, I'll admit, I've never spoken to an attorney in Florida who handles these, so if you are said attorney who handles these, please send me a note and let me know what the likelihood is of this guy going back to jail. Because I can tell you that in Michigan, you can get jail time for reckless driving. It's a misdemeanor. I've tried cases, okay? And I can also tell you that despite the fact that you face jail time, I've seen people who are convicted of reckless driving, fines, costs, points, and all that, and the judge just said, yeah, but you got a clean record. And interestingly, when you're being sentenced for a driving offense, a judge might look at your criminal record also. So they don't normally look at your criminal record on a traffic offense. So you got no criminal record and clean driving record, and you got one reckless driving, there's a good chance, and I've seen this a lot, where a judge goes, okay, I could send you to jail. You understand that, but I'm not going to send you to jail. Just learn from this and don't let anything like this ever happen again. And I've seen that happen quite a bit, and that is a fairly common outcome. So I don't know this guy will get any more jail time, but also understand that this charge could be plea bargained down, meaning that if he hires an attorney and the attorney talks to the prosecutor, and they might say, something, he'll plead, but is there any chance we can knock it down from super speeder to something else? And they might say, yeah, we can do that just because it's easier, it's faster, the courts are backed up, we get more important stuff to do. Believe it or not, I've had a case before where a client of mine allegedly was traveling at a high rate of speed and passed by a police officer who just happened to have a speed detection device pointed in the general direction of my client. And my client went sailing by, and as soon as the police officer pulled out, my client stopped. And my client was with other people. There were other vehicles near him that didn't stop. And I don't know if I've told the story before or not, but when I went into court, I talked to the prosecutor, and I said, are you interested in talking about any deals here? And he took a look at the ticket and he goes, I don't think so. Look what your client's accused of doing. And I said, well, is the police officer here? And the police officer was. And I go, the police officer agrees to a deal. Will you give me one? And the guy goes, yeah, knock yourself out. And I go over to the police officer, do you remember this ticket? And I hand it to him. And he goes, yeah. Do you know how fast your client was going? I go, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was with other people, right? There were other vehicles near him? Yeah. Where did they go? The police officer goes, oh, they didn't stop. I go, my guy pulled over. I go, if my guy wanted to, could he have gotten away? And the officer goes, you know something? I'll cut you some slack for that. And reduced it. He agreed to reduce it. So the cop and I walk over to the prosecutor, and the cop goes, give this guy a deal. And the prosecutor looks at me like what? And in that case, my guy doing the right thing, after he'd already been probably going a little bit over the speed limit, paid off huge. Because he could have gotten away, like the other guys did. He could have, but he stopped. So as an attorney, you got to try to look at every little fact you got and go, is there any way I can spin this or maybe polish this up a little bit or point this out? But in that case, that makes complete sense because my client could have gotten away. Because think about this. You're a police officer on a stationary vehicle and you are reading speeds as people go by you, and somebody blows by you and you decide to pull out and chase them. Every second that you are wasting before you get out up to speed, they're getting away from you. They're getting away from you. And if they know they're being chased, they might increase their speed a little bit and disappear into the night, which is what the other people did. So here, the guy pulled over, says he was late for a haircut, wasn't argumentative apparently, wasn't combative, simply, hey, you know something, and owned up to it. That might help him. It might, but we'll never know unless we get a follow-up, which is highly unlikely on a traffic ticket. We'll see. Rory sent this. Thanks a lot from Joe Kucinski, who wrote at roadandtrack.com. C8 Corvette driver arrested for 107 mile per hour sprint because he was late for a haircut, according to what he told the cops. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. When will I learn? The answer to life's problems aren't at the bottom of a bottle. They're on TV.